Hi, I'm Cher Safran with Share Wisdom Network and host of the Nautilus Book Awards Author Spotlight Series. Now celebrating 20 years of honoring better books for a better world, Nautilus Book Awards continues this important mission forward to spotlight visionary books that co-create a better world and more positive future. The Nautilus Awards embraces books from a wide spectrum of the publishing industry, which radiate hope and wisdom, inspiring and connecting our lives as individuals, communities, and planetary citizens. This is a vast and crucial conversation now more than ever. The Author Spotlight series offers opportunity to increase the volume and visibility of the authors' voices as found in these empowering Nautilus Award-winning books. Author Jill Sylvester is with us here today sharing insights from her Nautilus Award-winning book, Trust Your Intuition, 100 Ways to Transform Anxiety and Depression for Stronger Mental Health, which won the Silver Award in the Personal Growth, Self-Help, Small and Self-Published category. So I'm delighted to tell you about Jill. She's a licensed therapist and author of several books, including the young adult novels, The Land of Blue, and Awakening, Book 1 in the Devon Dream Agent series. She's also the creator of Planting the Seeds, a line of inspirational cards for children and their caregivers. Each product is created with the intention of guiding a person to consider the power of choice and intuition. Jill's work has been featured in Well and Good, Bustle, She Knows, Parenthood, Teen Mentor, and OprahMag.com. Jill, welcome. I'm so delighted to have you on the show, and congratulations on your book award.
Thank you, Cher. Thank you for having me.
Really delighted. You have an extraordinary book, my dear. It's beautifully written, and it's chock-a-block full of information that is so desperately needed right now, and we're going to get into that. But first you say intuition is the key to stronger health, mental health. Why intuition?
Because I feel like everybody needs to trust themselves and be able to look inside themselves for the wisdom that they have innately. And when you learn to flex that muscle, you learn to help yourself out in a variety of situations. Most importantly, your mental health, which is everything to have good mental health.
What do you mean by intuition?
Trusting your intuition is to trust that inner voice, that voice that we all hear, that little whisper that tells us to move in this direction, to move, away from something, towards something. And it's listening to your higher self, that innate wisdom that is available to all of us, not just people who are, intuitive.
So critical. And actually, you have an excerpt at the beginning of your book I'd love for you to read. It really helps set the stage for our conversation.
Sure. Truly deciding that you want to raise the bar for your life is the most important step you can take in dealing with your depressed and anxious feelings. You are not the label of depression and anxiety, those heavy words we often assign to ourselves that tend to keep us stuck on that rigid plane. These are feelings we can do something about. The moment you separate from that lower vibration and decide you truly want something different for yourself, not just in theory, but in action, you change your story. Just as important as noticing what you don't want is deciding what you do want. Congratulate yourself for wanting to become unstuck. That declaration alone is what prompts change. The following pages in my book offer 100 tips and techniques that I use with clients in my private practice as a licensed mental health counselor with a holistic and alternative bent. My clients include adults, adolescents, children, and parents, but I wasn't always a therapist. Before that, I worked in the corporate world in management, my identity for many years until I had my first child. Then suddenly awakening to my intuition, which rocked my world, my priorities changed. And before that, I was a college student, struggling deeply with anxiety and depression, suffering actually. I always had, all the way back to when I can first remember. I didn't know any differently. That's just the way it was and how I thought it was always going to be. This book includes the tools I have used in my own personal development over a period of almost 30 years. I know that these techniques work. I live them. When we apply the tools on a regular basis, not just when we feel like doing them, or when depression and anxiety rear their dark energy, and work on our own personal programs and become consistent in our self-care, we see results. I have found, both in my own life and in the lives of my clients, that unlocking your own intuition is the key to change. Good mental health is everything. It affects our relationships, our jobs, our role as parents, ourselves as we seek our purpose. The only way out of those difficult feelings is to make the choice to move through those feelings, to learn more about yourself in the process, coming to understand that when you do the work, you become better able to serve. And that's really, I believe, the point for us all. Take your time with each section, perhaps simply focus on just one technique each day. When you're ready, move forward. Use the call to action part that's included with each technique as you wish. If you are a writer, choose a journal or notebook to record your feelings. If you are an artist, doodle your reflections through color and imagery. If you are a thinker, then simply ponder the questions in a hot bath, on a morning run, or in your car on a long drive, letting your mind bring you to the answers that serve you best. The important thing is to apply what you learn. Knowledge holds power, but wisdom is rooted in application. Lastly, why did I choose the word transform in the title when I could have used overcome, as I did originally? First, I had a dream that there was a better word. Second, when I looked up the definition of transform, Webster's New Dictionary read, to change the form or appearance of, to change the condition, nature, or function of. That's exactly what you're going to achieve by reading and applying the techniques in this book. You're going to change the very nature of your anxiety and depression by coming to understand the intuitive message behind both. Enjoy the road ahead. I promise you, life gets better when you learn to trust your intuition. I'm grateful for learning to listen to mine every day.
It is so beautiful. And that's how your book begins. So you know that every step that you lead us through, and you use, in fact, it's laid out in a path so that we can begin the path and you take us step by step to each kind of level of awareness, level of emotional sense of well-being, and it's just beautiful, really. And I imagine that you are finding that the anxiety and depression level is even deeper now, given all that's going on in our world, than it has been. Is that accurate?
Yes, very definitely. I find it's divisive often. We've got people who really are struggling with it, and then we've got other people, not so much. And I feel that causes anxiety and depression in itself by creating that separation between people. That darker kind of an energy that issues tend to bring up once again. Intending for us to separate ourselves in terms, as opposed to integrating ourselves with people. So yeah, I think that it's very much a thing right now, for sure.
It's very much a thing. And I'm delighted that you're using intuition as that pathway. It's not common that when we talk about mental health that we use intuition, or that it's talked about. So how do you, in fact, use intuition yourself when you're working with clients?
So, my background is clinical. I'm a licensed mental health therapist, but I like to bring in that holistic piece, meaning I like to look at the whole picture of a person as opposed to just through the lens of that clinical lens. I like to stay away from a feeling of disorder when someone is struggling with something and try to look at the reason something's happening. So if someone's feeling anxious, as opposed to, putting that label of disorder on a person, which gives it like a low vibe, it makes us feel kind of, can bring about shame. It can bring about, this is the way my family is. So this is the way I am, this is the way it's always going to be. I try to look at it as, let's talk about what's happening in your life and why this is coming up right now, because it brings about an opportunity for change. I believe depression brings an opportunity for change. Anxiety brings about an opportunity for change. And any of these, more negative feelings that we all tend to struggle with from time to time, they're rooted in opportunity for us to make a different choice, whether it's in terms of a job or in terms of a relationship or something in our life that just needs to be redirected. It's often the way that our intuition speaks to us is through discomfort, because when we're just going along and we're content and things are fine, that's not when we're going to make change. It's through those distressing feelings, that we're going to stop and say, I think that something is speaking to me. I think something needs to be different in my life. I'm feeling discontent. So what does that mean? And so when we explore the nature of what the anxiety is saying, we're now opening that door to our own intuition to learn how the body speaks to us. And, if we're feeling a certain way around a certain person, maybe that's a sign that we're not supposed to be in that relationship anymore. Or, maybe it's a feeling of being closer to, someone else or something else that's calling us. So listening to how the body speaks, listening to how the discomfort speaks is a conversation I'm always having in session with people of how to read that energy, if you will, in order to, follow the yellow brick road to where it is we're supposed to be and what it is we're supposed to be doing.
So is that what you mean when you say listen to your anxiety?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if someone comes in, let's say, and says they're, feeling a lot of anxiety, it causes us stress, right? We don't want to feel those feelings. But when we start to look at why the anxiety is happening, why our body is causing us angst, and being able to start to read that energy, those bodily messages, we start to understand there's a pattern, and that we can listen to those feelings in order to get clearer on the next best step to move in. And once you become more comfortable with those anxious feelings, you get really good at practicing how to flex that muscle, so that instead of being alarmed by it, afraid of it, and avoiding it, which is what we tend to do with anxiety and negative feelings, we can ally with it and be able to, join forces with it so that we move through it much more quickly, but also come to trust ourselves, versus going outside ourselves for the answer.
Beautiful. Beautiful. What do you mean by know your why?
Knowing your why is about understanding why you're doing something. Why, for example, my why with writing this book is to help, more people in terms of the people that are using these tools in session that I'm seeing get well. And also, like I said in the introduction, using, the tools myself over a period of 30 years of personal development and still going. So, the why is to share with others what I know to be true, what I find, helping others. And that's my why, wanting to share that information. So when a person starts to ask themselves what their why is, they're getting clear on the reasons they're doing certain things. And when you bring an intention to something, it creates a far more powerful outcome. And joining forces with your why is going to help you to be happier in your life, have more joy in your life when you're feeling good about what it is you're doing, but also when you're not. Because if you don't feel like you're having intention with something that doesn't make you feel good, and that you don't know your why about it, then maybe you want to leave that thing and move to something else. So knowing your intention and your why is important, in my opinion.
That's lovely, knowing your intention and your why. And then you talk about words matter. So having an intention, but using the right words, or what?
In terms of being able to, I think this is what you mean when words matter. In one of the sections in the book, it's about making sure that you're clear on what it is you want to say and being intentional with your words so that you are using your voice wisely in order to communicate better, but also to, feel good about the energy that you're putting out in the world. Because sometimes when we're reactionary, we say things that aren't always so nice. And so when you are clear on what it is you want to say, you not only feel better about yourself, but your relationships develop as well.
And I love how empowering your book is. You really emphasize that we have it within us. And it's having others like you to help us on that journey is really helpful. It helps us to be able to speak it, talk about what we do and don't want, and you can help us hear us saying what maybe we hadn't heard we were saying, you know, those kinds of things as a therapist. I'm a firm believer in the value of therapy, having benefited from it for years. But your book also is this beautiful guide for people to use in addition or even separately. I mean, really, you are so clear about helping us get in touch with who we are, who we want to be, where we want to go, and you do it in this very gentle, meaningful way. I'm very grateful that you have written your book and that you've shared it. Is there one message that you want to be sure people take away from your book?
Well, there's so many, and why there's 100 in the book. But I would have to say that the most important message for me is for people to know that there is a force greater than themselves that guides you. And when you can open to that, and we're not talking rainbows and unicorns and airy fairy stuff, we're talking about a grounded approach to listening to the voice of your higher self and rising above that, you know, ego voice. And again, the term I use is gremlins, and the chatter, the noise that we all have that's constantly berating, constantly going on. You don't have to suffer from anxiety and depression clinically to know what I'm talking about. Everybody's got that constant chatter in their minds. And so my biggest hope when people read this book is that they understand that there's another level. And, you know, it's just like, you know, flying in an airplane, right? If you're flying above turbulence and then you get to that place where there's, you know, you rise above it. And so that's what I want people to tap into. And that is available to everybody. And once you tap into that place, whether it's through meditation or just becoming quiet, through prayer, through stillness, whatever it is for the reader, once you tap into that place, then a whole new set of possibilities becomes available to you. And oftentimes when you are just on that plane of constant chatter with the gremlins over and over and over, you aren't aware that that's a possibility at all. So I would have to say that's my biggest takeaway, is that once you learn that there's an opposing thought, it's like, you know, light and dark. That's the theme of all of my books is those two vibrations. So whether I'm writing, you know, a YA fiction, whether I'm writing a middle reader or this nonfiction self-help book, the themes are always about light and dark. And when you understand that you don't have to reside on that plane, that frequency, that there's, you know, an opposing vibration that you can tap into, that it can completely change the trajectory of your life and bring so much more peace and personal power. And that's what I would like people to work through to get to the book. It isn't just, you know, one thing that you do and then it happens. It's a process. And when you're committed to that personal development and growth work, those are the rewards, is feeling that through that process.
Well, thank you, Jill Sylvester, for writing such a beautiful, powerful, meaningful, and timely book, for touching our hearts, opening our minds, and inspiring our lives with Trust Your Intuition, 100 Ways to Transform Anxiety and Depression for Stronger Mental Health. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
And on behalf of the Nautilus Book Awards team, thank you all.